أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على خير الخلق وناصر الحق والهادي إلى الصراط المستقيم سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد بارك الله لكم وفيكم وأسعد أوقاتكم وتقبل لنا منا ومنكم طاعاتنا وطاعتكم في هذا الشهر المبارك شهر رمضان إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all and protect you and have you continue to reap the benefits of this beautiful month of Ramadan. So we are in our 12th day, in our 12th session, speaking about the stations of the believers. And in this session we will look at the station of Hijrah, or of the Muhajir. Hijrah or the Muhajir, the one who emigrates. And as we know, the pivotal moment that took place in the life of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and in the life of the Ummah, of the community of Muslims, was when they made the Hijrah from Mecca to Al-Madinah. And the hadith of niyyah, the hadith of intention, the Hijrah is mentioned specifically when the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that actions are but by intention. And then he mentioned at the end of the hadith, فَمَنْ كَانَ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. So whoever's hijrah is for Allah and His Prophet, then that's what his hijrah is for, that's what he intended. And sometimes they say in hijrah إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ, the hijrah to Allah and His Prophet ﷺ. So the hijrah wasn't so much as changing one's residence from Mecca to Al-Madinah, but also changing one's entire direction. And this is what the companions did. And so we find many, many verses in the Quran speaking of and praising the Hijrah and the Muhajirin. For example, قوله تعالى للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله رضوانه وينصرون الله ورسوله أولئك هم الصادقون. For the fuqara, the muhajirin, they were destitute, they literally had the clothes on their backs. أخرجوا من ديارهم, they were exiled from their homes and from their wealth. يبتغون فضلا من الله رضوانه, only seeking the bounty and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وينصرون الله ورسوله, and they give aid to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أولئك هم الصادقون, they are the صادقون, they are the most sincere, they are the truthful, they are the trustworthy. And many verses in addition to this, الذين آمنوا وجاهدوا في سبيل الله وأموالهم وأنفسهم أعظم درجة عند الله. And those who believed and those who made hijrah and those who struggled and strived with the Prophet ﷺ have the greatest award. And the hijrah itself is praised. قوله تعالى ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجر فيها. Is the earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not vast so that you can emigrate, go from one place to another? And similar to this, يا عبادي الذين آمنوا إن أرضي واسعة فإياي فاعبدون. يا عبادي الذين آمنوا, my servants who have believed, my earth is vast, فإياي فاعبدون, and only you, only me, in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should you worship. When we translate this word hijrah, we often say emigrate. And it's interesting in the modern context, when people leave one country to another, depending upon who is the one evaluating them or considering them, they have different names. So if you are a holder of a Western passport from the European Union or from the UK or from the United States or from Australia, and you emigrate and go to another country to seek a living or study or for whatever reason, then you're called an expat, an expatriate, which has some sort of prestige attached to it. However, if you are a holder of a passport from the global south and you are trying to make your way north to one of these European countries or to the United States or to the UK or to Australia, then you are considered to be a migrant. Or in some cases, you're considered to be an alien if you actually make your way there without the proper documentation and the proper paperwork. And if you are fleeing a difficult situation and you are seeking asylum or you're seeking to find safe haven in another country, then you're called a refugee. So we have different words for why people move from one place to the next. But in the context of the Quran, we have this idea of hijrah, muhajir. And Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, he said that there are really 8 main reasons, 8 kind of general main reasons why people, why it would be recommended or it would be good to make hijrah. One of them, and we won't go through all of them, but we'll go through them kind of in as much as we can in the time that we have allotted. The first one he mentions, الهجرة من الخوف على الدين والنفس كهجرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم آخرا وأولا. So the main reason one would make hijrah, at least from a Muslim perspective, is that the most important thing for us is that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that we practice our deen in the best manner that we can. And if we are in a place where that is not quite possible, where not just our lives are under threat, but even our way of life and our practice of the deen, then this would be a reason to make hijrah and to emigrate from one place to the next. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ was thinking about the hijrah before it actually happened, and when people would come from Hajj and they would, and before it was kind of reinstituted under Islamic auspices, كان يعرض نفسه على القبائل, he would bring his case to the different tribes, and he was hoping that maybe Ta'if would be the place where he'd make hijrah, or maybe somewhere in Eastern Arabia. But it turned out that the people of Yathrib, أصحاب البيعة العقبة الأولى والثانية, the people of Yathrib, later to be known as Medina, the ones who gave him the bay'ah or gave him the oath of fealty twice, 2 years in a row, they will be the ones who would be most fortuitous and fortunate to have the Prophet of Islam make his hijrah along with his community of believers from Mecca to Al-Madinah and Munawwara. And in this sense, yes, they were fleeing from persecution and difficulties, but not so much under fear of death and fear of persecution, but fear that they can't practice their deen in the proper way that they can practice it. And so the Prophet ﷺ made his way to Medina with the people in Mecca for the hijrah. It's interesting that there were other people, even in Mecca, who were not able to make the hijrah for one reason or another, including Al-Abbas and then his family, which included Ibn al-Abbas. There's some discrepancy or difference of opinion about when Al-Abbas, the uncle, and only the second uncle of the Prophet ﷺ to accept Islam, the other uncle being Sayyidina Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib, while Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib accepted Islam, and there's difference amongst the ulama when that actually happened. He actually participated in the Battle of Badr with the Quraysh, and he was forced to participate and forced to go, as was the brother of Sayyidina Ali, Aqil, and they were eventually taken as prisoners of war. And then it was Abbas himself who was asked by the Prophet ﷺ to free himself from being a prisoner of war, and the Prophet ﷺ told him that you should free yourself. And Abbas said, well, I had given you some gold in the past, maybe we can count that. He said, no, that's not what we're counting here. You have to do something new. And then Abbas said, but I don't have any money. He said, well, actually, you had told your wife, this particular story he recounted, where you had some money kept. And then Abbas said, only I and my wife know about this. He said, you truly are the messenger of Allah. And he said, I came and I was brought to this battle forcibly. I was coerced. I didn't want to. And so he freed himself and he went back, and then he officially kind of was recognized as accepting Islam, either at the time of Fath Mecca or Khaybar, sometime before the actual conquest of Mecca. And then another man recounted in the hadith for Sahih, an Arabi, a desert Bedouin, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he asks permission to make the hijrah. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him, and he didn't live in Mecca, he lived in the desert. And he had camels, and he asked him, he has camels, I have camels, and do you pay the zakat on them? I do. He said, do you give some of the milk from your camels to the destitute? He said that I do. And then he said, then no need for you to make hijrah. And he instructed him, أعمل وراء البحار فإن الله لن يترك من عملك شيئا. Right? And the bihar was kind of the seas, or the desert, what was behind the cities. He said, your work then is for where you are. You should stay where you are and continue to do what you do, and you don't have to make the hijrah, because he would have left his family, his business, everything behind. And so the ulama also spoke about this in specific, about the hijrah, who had to make the hijrah. Some of them mentioned that only the people in Mecca were required to make the hijrah because of their specific situation. But for those who became Muslim outside of Mecca, many of them stayed where they were. Wallahu a'lam. So that's one reason one can make the hijrah. Qadi Abu Bakr said it's also one can make hijrah from a place where, in his words, min ard yusubba fiha salaf, where the righteous predecessors, the righteous salaf, are cursed and damned. And what he means by this most likely is that somewhere where wisdom and the wisdom of the sages and of the early Muslims and so forth is cursed and damned, is not appreciated, this would also make the practice of the deen difficult. And he cites the verse in this regard, قوله تعالى وإذا رأيت الذين يخوضون في آياتنا فأعرض عنهم حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره وإما ينسينك الشيطان فلا تقعد بعد الذكرى مع القوم الظالمين. And if you see those people يخوضون في آياتنا, يعني they disparage our verses, يعني the verses of the Quran, فأعرض عنهم حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره, then turn away from them until they start talking about something else. وإما ينسينك الشيطان, and if the shaitan wants to make you in a state of ghafla or nisyan and forgetfulness, فلا تقعد بعد الذكرى مع القوم الظالمين, and after you have received the revelation or the dhikra, the remembrance, فلا تقعد مع القوم الظالمين, do not sit with those people who sow corruption and the wrongdoers. So this would also be a reason that is mentioned by the Shaykh here, Al-Qadi Abu Bakr. He also mentions if you have a fear for yourself, and it's something that's personally is going to be for you, maybe not for the whole community, but you personally. And he cites examples that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, after he tried to guide his people and he brought with him the clear proofs and stated that their idols have no power to do anything, and then he broke the large one, or he broke the rest of the idols, and he said, ask the large one if you want to know who broke the idols. And then they put him in the manjaniq, they put him in the catapult and cast him into the fire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him from this. Then as a young man he left, and he had his wife Sarah, and he went and emigrated to Egypt at that point. And then after that, when he had his wife Hajar, he was instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take her to the valley of what was Mecca, or not quite Mecca yet, and leave her there in this barren desert. And she asked him, is this something that Allah asked you to do? And he said yes. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam made that hijrah at least twice. Musa alayhi salam also made hijrah, but he took his people with him. And he said, Inna ma'a rabbi sayahdeen, with my Lord is with me and he will guide me. And he crosses the Red Sea into the promised land out of Egypt. And that was also an issue for Musa alayhi salam, not just for himself but his community, but clearly for Ibrahim it was something for himself. And he had also told his wife Sarah, there's nobody on the earth who worships Allah except me and you. And some of the ulama state that Ibrahim will be sent as an ummah, as a nation unto himself, because he didn't have any followers outside of his immediate family. Wallahu a'lam. The Shaykh also mentions the hijrah for talab al-ilm, for seeking knowledge. And this is also mentioned in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah. فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة يتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. That there should be a group of people who do that, who even stay back or dedicate themselves to seeking knowledge. And obviously الرحلة في طلبة العلم is well known. The journey for seeking knowledge is well known. Of course, people like Imam Shafi'i, who traveled to Egypt and traveled to Al-Medina and traveled to Iraq seeking knowledge. Imam Malik didn't have to make hijrah. He stayed in Al-Medina because he saw that Al-Medina was the place that people make hijrah to, not hijrah from. And so he stayed there and studied for many, many years, and also taught for many, many years in Al-Medina al-Munawwara ala sahibaha afdalu salatu wassalam. And in some of the other hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-Muhajir man hajar al-ma'asi, that the Muhajir is the one who makes hijrah from his sins. And in another one, Al-Muhajir man hajara ma naha Allah anhu, that the Muhajir is the one who makes hijrah from that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made prohibited. So the hijrah then can be made for many reasons, but the primary reason is that you want to practice your deen well. And the Quran states to us, أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. So the Shaykh, he mentioned in his book, he said, for whatever reason that you decide to emigrate, and he himself, Al-Qadi Abu Bakr, was an emigrant. He emigrated from Al-Maghrib, and he often states in his books how he did not want to go back, but he did go back for a while, and the only reason that he went back is because his mother was there alone, and he went to serve his mother. Otherwise, he had spent much time in Egypt, he had spent much time in Jerusalem, and before it became occupied by the Crusaders, and in fact he knew many of the pious men and women who worshipped in Jerusalem, and that they were martyred on the day that the Crusaders came in, and he knew them personally. And you get a sense of loss and lamentation in his books about how he felt about this. And he mentioned that they were people of the mihrab. They were people that each one of them had a particular mihrab, a particular prayer niche within Masjid al-Aqsa or Masjid al-Sakhra, or in that blessed place where they would each dedicate to worship, and that they remained there for 30 years or more, and that when the Crusaders came in and slaughtered them and martyred them in their place because they refused to leave. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lift all of the trial and tribulation upon our brethren everywhere, في فلسطين وفي مسجد الأقصى وفي سائر بلدان المسلمين، وأن يرفع راية الإسلام، وأن ينصر الإسلام والمسلمين على عدوهم، إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه، والحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.